Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, and obviously, the major salient point that's going on, the big storm out there, no pun intended, is the trial of Donald J. Trump in New York City. Dershowitz, legal scholars, unlike Mr. Cohn, can still not figure out what the actual crime is. But here's the real rub that I think is really awesome, and I'd love your opinion on it, and I'm sure our listeners would as well. I heard an analyst, and I believe he's 100% correct, given the current state of the election and where both candidates are, that if the New York case ends in either an acquittal or a hung jury, it's game over for Uncle Joe. Your thoughts?
I think that's probably pretty accurate. We've been watching Joe Biden's poll numbers drop over the last 6 months. And this is with Trump dealing with the Georgia case, dealing with the New York case. And it hasn't slowed him down at all. And now you're seeing all of these cases fall apart. There is no there. There's no evidence of any crime in the New York case. The classified documents case is on hold probably until after the election. There's a question of whether Georgia's going to be able to go forward with Fannie Willis. That might also be postponed till after the election. So all of this lawfare has completely failed.
I actually like Tucker Carlson's insight. He basically stated that if it wasn't for these trials, he doubts that there would be a good chance that Trump wouldn't even be the nominee. Good job, Democrats. And I believe that's true. He was pretty low before all this. I'm not saying it's necessarily true, but it's certainly or something to talk about and think.
I'm not sure if it would have affected him becoming the nominee, but it is certainly affecting how people are viewing him now. You would not have seen the shift we're seeing in the African American communities towards Trump if they hadn't been persecuting him like this.
I 100% agree. I think you're right. The analysis is spot on. He would have gotten and I don't think it would have been a slam dunk. He would have gotten through the primary. Nikki Haley would have been much bigger of a threat. He would have gotten the nomination, but it would have been any person's bet who wins in the general. Now, I think, especially with what's going on, and the thing, the trials, it's funny, but it's scary. It's not just because I'm not a big fan of Uncle Joe. When you have a trial, what does it say about the average person? That you could be arrested, Dr. Lopkin, because I don't like the way you wear your glasses. Essentially, that's what we're talking about.
Right. I mean, take a look at these cases, even just as a whole. In New York, now, first of all, I have never heard of a court case, particularly a criminal case, that the underlying crime is not identified.
That's awesome.
I thought that was illegal. I also thought it was illegal for the prosecution not to provide a witness list to the defense. I'm pretty sure they were responsible for doing that. And yet in the Trump case, no, we're not telling you who's coming up.
Yes, I've never seen that on an episode of Perry Mason, but I guess I must have missed that episode.
I must have missed that episode of Law and Order. And then, you've got the documents case down in Florida. And last week it came out that Jack Smith mishandled the documents. Now, the whole charge against Donald Trump is that he mishandled classified documents. And now we find out that the special counsel mishandled the documents when he removed them from Trump's custody.
Yeah, and I think Uncle Joe didn't do a swell job with documents either, did he? Or maybe I'm mistaken.
No, he did not. And that's something else, is that more and more evidence is coming out that, yes, White House counsel actually coordinated with Jack Smith, with Alvin Bragg. Now, this is a clear cut case of election interference. The White House was not allowed to have anything to do with this. And yet, they're trying to interfere in the 2024 election through these court cases.
And about, before we move on about the New York case, a couple things I think are very interesting. Again, I think it's helped Trump that he's gotten support by, let's just say, pretty even keel people like Speaker of the House Johnson and others, and you even have kind of like almost like a apprentice for the VP. You have Bergen. I think he basically took the lead, which is a real indicator. And he was on the plane at the Trump rally in New Jersey. So he's certainly more than in the mix. But I think it was a real show of support. I think, again, it backfired in the Democrats' face. I really, truly believe
It
that. And even you have people like Bill Maher and the whole thing about Stormy Daniels trying to get sympathy and empathy about she black. Yeah, she black. She's been doing it for a living. She blacked out like I blacked out, doing a podcast. It's like, come on, really? And then so she's on Bill Maher saying, yeah, everything's fine. It was great, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So that's another BS and basically totally. And she flamed out on the stage too. She talks to dead people. Isn't that a movie with well, I forgot his name,
with
but who
Bruce
cares?
Willis,
And then
yes.
there you go. And then you have Cohn, who basically I have to say I'm really not trained as a psychologist, nor do I want to be. But he's about you got one foot on a banana peel, another on a mental hospital because he's wearing Superman outfits and helmets and then having Trump in prison T-shirts. Credibility check, please. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no,
And a boy genius too.
his credibility was shot before he ever took the stand because every prosecution witness, and I'm going to repeat that, prosecution witness stated what a horrible person he was, that they couldn't stand him. Meanwhile, they were all telling the jury how great it was to work for Trump. Then you've got Michael
Yeah,
Cohen
I didn't think it went
going
too well, did it?
yeah, going on TikTok every night, essentially trying to pitch a reality show starring him. He
And
wants,
selling merchandise. No, seriously, you can't make it up.
yeah,
Hawking merchandise,
this
unbelievable.
this is just a scam for him, one of many where he's trying to cash out. So he had no credibility, and it was hysterical watching the liberal pundits because even the best thing they could say about the Cohen testimony was, well, he came across very calm. It's like, yes, because he
Yeah.
rehearsed it.
So it is.
You know,
Yeah, and that's one thing I think Dershowitz had a really good point. I think I forgot who else. I believe when the other lawyer said this basically when your enemy's digging a hole, let him dig. But Dershowitz had the thing of maybe during the cross examination they should ask Cohn about his preparation, how he was prepped, what they asked him, because there's a lot of things that he said that were, let's just say, less than accurate or true. And, was the prosecution aware of his mistruths? So I think that would be good. But, and I believe it wraps up on Thursday, correct, Dr. Lopkin?
allegedly it's going to wrap up on Thursday. We'll see what happens.
Yes, I did another analysis that some lawyers thought it would be a good idea for the defense to wrap up on Thursday, just for various reasons, which basically don't have the whole
You
thing
mean
go spill over to Monday and everything
you
else.
mean
Have them
the
thinking, have
process?
it fresh.
You mean the prosecution
No,
wrap up on Thursday?
yes,
The-
exactly. Oh, no,
yeah.
no, the actual cross examination.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
okay,
But
now I get
that's for lawyers.
right.
Yeah, that's fine. It's neither here nor there. But the biggest deal is really the impact on the election. And you look at the election, Dr. Lachlan, the polls, which I believe underestimate Trump by, let's just be conservative, by 3 points. He's winning in all the battleground states. He's crushing it in places like Nevada, Georgia. I think I believe Wisconsin is the only place that Biden has a 2-point lead, but hey, if you look at the
No,
margin of error in the Wisconsin,
yeah,
right?
Wisconsin and Michigan, Biden is still leading, but within the margin of error. There were five other battleground states that Trump is winning either by 6% or higher, which is outside the
Yes,
margin of error. And
and that's
let's not
like,
forget it wasn't that long ago that the New York Times themselves were saying, "Oh, our poll must be an outlier. Trump can't be
I
winning by
remember
this
that.
much."
Yeah, I think it's, and that's why, and your comment on this, why Uncle Joe had his badass make my day, basically inviting Trump to debate. I think he had no option. He could not accept. How do you like this? He couldn't just. He had to be proactive because I truly believe, even though he's delusional, his advisors know and understand that he's in deep shit. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's take a look at this debate challenge. And by the way, yes, there will be two debates. They've already been scheduled for June and September. The first one on CNN, June 27th. The second one in September on ABC. But let's take a look at Biden's, badass, look at me video. Okay, first of all, he did not challenge Trump live, he did it via video. The video was 14 seconds long and had five cuts in it.
Yes, I love that.
Which he
That's
could
beautiful.
not even talk for 14 seconds without screwing up. They had to edit this together. Second of all, these are the earliest presidential debates in election history. Why? Because the Biden campaign needs time to clean up after Biden screws up in these debates.
Wow, whoa, that's really interesting, Dr. Loppin, because I heard other things. I think you have a really good point. The other counter argument was that Trump gets convicted and that'll be part of the debate, blah, blah, blah. No, I think you're more accurate. How do you like that, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin? I think you're right. Clean up on aisle 5 because it can't be right before the election's too fresh in the voters' minds. I think you might have something.
And take a look at the conditions that Biden put on these debates. Okay, first of all, he was only going to agree to debate on a media outlet that had previously held Democratic debates. Now, so he's obviously looking for a friendly audience. He can't handle live audiences. So part of the condition was that there wasn't going to be a live audience. Why? One, he gets flustered and distracted too easily. He can't focus when there's a large audience. Second of all, they couldn't guarantee that the audience wasn't going to spontaneously start yelling about Genocide Joe because these protesters have been following him around.
100%, and I think there's something else as well. Is everyone has a funny bone, and if he says something about cannibals, I mean, people are going to laugh. I mean, not even to screw things. I mean, my uncle was shot down, or I was involved in was Joe Namath wide receiver. Like, who knows?
And I think
you don't want an audience. I agree.
And I think that's also one of the reasons that he narrowed who he, which outlets he would participate in. Because let's face it, when he gets up there and he's questioned about the economy and he says, when I took office, there was 9% inflation, which he said 3 times in the last 2 weeks, CNN probably isn't going to fact check him and challenge him on it.
Yeah, 100% true. There's no, although CNN, which I'm no fan of, they're certainly not neutral arbitrators, but they're turning a little. I mean, MSNBC is just unhappy.
Yeah, they'll do a better job than MSNBC would. And in all fairness, and I'm blanking on her last name, but Erin from CNN, who just
Burnett.
Erin Burnett,
Erin
yes,
Burnett.
who just did the interview with. She did not softball him, and I mean, watching the look on his face when she actually asked questions, yeah, it was amazing. He was not ready for real questions.
No, it blew Uncle Joe away. Speaking of blowing Uncle Joe away, there's also more than talk about a virtual convention. Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, your thoughts on why and its repercussions, please.
Well, at this point, there's only one real reason to have a virtual convention, and that is because they know they are going to be inundated with protesters. This is going to look like Chicago 72. And they are not ready for it. They know Biden can't handle the spotlight. I mean, they could do what they did for the State of the Union in terms of Biden. You know, he rests up for 3 days, he gives a 40-minute speech, and then they rush him off. But with the protesters there, it's going to be chaos, and it's going to make not just Biden, but the whole party look bad. And I honestly believe that's the real reason they're considering a virtual convention.
I think it's the 80-20 rule. I 100% agree with you. 80 is the nutcases of that is, I'm sorry to say, the actual Democratic Party, and 20% is Uncle Joe still can't be trusted even with a teleprompter. So it's a combination, but it's definitely the vast majority is the protesters. But the real rub is it's not a good look. Who's going to watch you? I mean, what the heck?
No, what?
You no, watch?
I mean,
come on, are you kidding me?
Ratings for these conventions is not what they used to be.
Sucking
I
in.
mean, they used to be covered on all three networks. You know, everybody sat down, they watched throughout prime time. That hasn't happened in at least a decade, if not more. I mean, so the ratings for these things weren't great to begin with. Now, a virtual one, the only message that's going to show is that the Democratic Party is afraid to face the American people.
Yeah, it's not a good look in any way. Yeah, not good, not good at all. Also, speaking of not good at all, we have our elite, in quotations, elite higher learning institutions. So what do we have here? We have the good and the bad, the ugly. Let's look at the ugly and slash bad first. I think it was really awesome that you had Jerry Seinfeld at Duke University, okay? And I think that was more bad. It wasn't ugly because the ugly part of it was they were booing him, not because he's, super uber supporter of Israel. It's because he was Jewish. That's the ugly. The good,
Yeah.
unlike Columbia and these other nutcase universities, Harvard, whatever the list goes on, the vast majority of students started chanting Jerry, Jerry, very heartwarming, supporting him. So he had the freakazoids, with the first of all, it has nothing to do with that. And basically, you've just unmasked yourself as just a blatant anti Semite. You've been hiding behind the Palestinian slash Israeli conflict mask, and the gig's up, dude and dudette. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's all this has ever been about is anti-Semitism. Most of these protesters can't find Israel on a map. There was one
But
line.
wait a second. Whoa, whoa, whoa. These are. This is Ivy League. You're telling me they couldn't find it on a map? What have they been doing all this time? Rhetorical question.
Not only couldn't they find Israel on a map, these people couldn't find Gaza on a map of Gaza. They're not learning. They're not learning at these Ivy League institutions anymore. They're being indoctrinated. And we talked about this back when we were on terrestrial radio. A liberal arts education from any of these institutions is worthless because the only value it had was it was supposed to teach you how to think, how to analyze, how to interpret. And all of that has been gone for well over a decade, maybe two.
Well over.
They're not learning how to think, they're learning how to parrot. And this is a problem that goes all the way down into the elementary school and the public school system, but it's so much worse in the Ivy League when you're not
No,
teaching
no. Let me
people.
interject something. Let me interject something about that is shocking, and I think really shocked mom pa kettle in Indiana. Yeah, okay, public schools, we get the whole thing, okay. But this is the supposed creme de creme, and people that aren't paying attention, just living in their lives. They pop open a beer, watching the evening news or CNN or you name it, and they're like, "What the f is going on here?" I think I think it was a huge wake up call for a lot of people. I'm really serious
Oh,
about
it
that.
was.
They're like, "What the hell is
It
going
was
on
a
here?"
massive wake-up call. This drew back the curtains and showed what's
Yes.
actually going on at these Ivy League institutions. And it even before the protests, when the university presidents testified in front of Congress and refused to say that anti-Semitism was against their college policies. That
No,
was
genocide. That's
yes,
even worse.
that was the
Maxine Gay or
beginning.
whatever, a real genius.
That was the beginning of the curtain being drawn back. And now it's just become so blatant and so disgusting. I mean, you have right now, NYU is having their graduation. They're graduating at Yankee Stadium. And you had graduates walk out on their own graduation. And as far as I can tell, this is not pro Palestine. This is not even pro Hamas, as bad as that is. This is simply anti Jewish.
Oh, of course, yes, no question about it. But something. Sometimes karma's a bitch. They had these graduates. I believe it was from Duke, and they were proceeding down the line, receiving their diplomas, and they had their hands zip tied. And a couple of geniuses ripped up their diploma, started chanting, crazy shit. And it's going to be good when they go to their first interview, isn't it, Dr. Lopkin? Biffy and Buffy are going to be in for a little rude awakening. And when they come home to live with mommy and daddy, who created this monster along with the Ivy League, are going to be pretty PO'd when they just blew 300 grand. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be amazing when these students suddenly realize, oh, wait a minute. When I have to go for an interview, they're going to check social media about what I've
Yes, they
posted
are.
and what I've done. They're going to run background checks. This is not new. This has been going on for decades. They've always run background checks.
Yeah,
But
but now it's a
now
lot more sophisticated.
yes. Well, yes, it's a lot more sophisticated. But now, when they run these searches, the video of these idiots ripping up
I
their
love it.
diplomas is going to show up in the background check, in the social
A
media
hundred
check,
percent.
because this went viral and their resume is going to go right in the garbage.
A 100%. In fact, because they're really big on global warming and stuff. I think they should do their part because there's zero chance of getting a job. Save the paper. How do you like that suggestion?
There you
That's
go.
free, by the way. That's a free advice.
And
And yeah,
we've already seen backlash because about 13 or so federal judges already sent a letter to Columbia saying, we will not be hiring from Columbia for our law clerks because you're clearly not teaching them. We've seen Columbia and NYU students already have job offers rescinded because they were seen on these videos. So we're already seeing it happen, and it's not going to get any better.
no, it's not. But I believe Trump said this at his rally. I'm sorry, 100% agree. A lot of these people are outside, see, guest students. And I believe deportation should happen immediately. How do you like that? There are guests.
Yeah,
In a real country, that would happen.
any student that participated in the harassment, in the vandalism, if they are not a U.S. citizen, yes, they should be deported. But the bigger problem in these massive protests is if you look at the stats when they were arrested, approximately 50% of the people arrested weren't even students. They were outside agitators who are paying for this, who are rallying up these sheep in order to push their own agenda. I think that
Wait,
says
whoa, 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 whoa! But what I thought the Ivy League had critical thinking. That was why
no,
we're
they
paying these people
don't.
200
They
grand.
do not have critical
Really?
thinking. And clearly, this shows what sheep these people are for going along with this. I started laughing every time I kept seeing these interviews where reporters would go in and say, "So, what is it you're
Love it.
demanding? Why are you here?" And they didn't know. And finally, they started saying, "Oh, well, we're not allowed to talk to the media. You have to go talk to a media spokesperson." Really?
Oh
What
no,
kind?
that's actually true because I think
Yes,
these professional organizers knew that they were coming across looking like idiots, so they
yes.
told all the boy and girl geniuses not to talk to the press because you're a moron.
Right. So much for these being spontaneous college protests, and they care so much about this. Yeah,
I
this was staged anti-Semitism. These were people who are against Israel, who are radical leftists, who hijacked these morons at these Ivy League universities that, quite frankly, I think they should be suing the universities because they didn't learn enough not to fall for this. So clearly they didn't get an education.
Oh yes, I think it's good. They should sue him for dereliction of duty.
Yes.
100%. I mean, you pay to go to a doctor because you have a cold, and next thing you know you're in the ICU. There's obviously a problem, but I think there's irony in everything, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin, and that's when you have professional agitators with like a fifth grade education can convince the so-called intelligentsia to do what they do. I mean, that shows you that sums up Ivy League into a nutshell. Does it not, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin?
It does. The Ivy League has become a scam, and quite frankly, an incredibly profitable scam. And that's what these institutions have turned into. They're basically pyramid schemes.
Yeah, they're actually hedge funds with classrooms. There you go.
Yeah, they're hedge
I
funds that manage to get nonprofit status. That's what they are.
Exactly. It is a scam, but it's coming to a close. I truly believe that. But now let's talk about the good before we move on from, I'll use the term higher education. I'm not so sure about that. UNC, University of North Carolina, has just defunded their DEI initiatives. Surprise, surprise, because they had a brain and they realized all this shit. Like I said before, the monster has come to eat Dr. Frankenstein. And guess what? They're putting that money into public safety. That is a good university versus Harvard that is agreed to negotiate with these morons about defunding, divesting out of Israeli related investments.
Yeah,
That should do real well for their endowment too.
you're starting to see a massive split in how colleges and universities are responding to what's going on. We talked about this, I believe, on the last podcast that MIT got rid of DEI. Now you've got UNC doing it. And you're starting to see that momentum pick up. More colleges are getting rid of DEI because it has been a massive failure. On the other end of the spectrum, though, you've got Harvard and Columbia that not only aren't getting rid of DEI, they're doubling down on it. And you are going to see a massive backlash against these DEI colleges from donors, especially, but also in
And
their
applicants,
applicants. Yes.
because you have a choice. It's a tale of two cities, to quote Dickens. It's going to be, do you want to go to University of North Carolina, which is, I mean, that says Ivy League. That's not officially Ivy. Great, unbelievably great school, Duke, okay? Or do you want to go to Meshuggah U, okay? And I don't want my kid exposed to this. Not, and I think a lot of parents, not just because I have a, because I'm biased, I don't really want to say, after what people, adults, parents saw over the last 3 months, I'm not sending my kid to Columbia. What are you, crazy?
No, I
Yeah,
will
North Carolina, of course.
I will put the Tar Heels against the Crimson any day of the week.
And a lot of other people will as well. Um, Very interesting because speaking of geniuses, we have Mayor Adams from New York. Of course, if he wasn't, didn't check certain boxes, there'd be front page of the New York Times. It's racist. He says that there's a lot of open jobs for lifeguards in New York City, and they should probably give them to the illegals because they're good swimmers. Another boy genius.
That was absolutely amazing to me.
Genius.
I could not
A genius.
believe he said that out loud. And I think the best response I've heard to this was Greg Gutfeld, who said, following that logic, we should turn over home security to the squatters.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
it's unbelievable. Okay, and right when he had a moment of, let's say, sanity, and he pulls that one. Yeah, he's not the brightest bulb in the Christmas tree. And speaking of that, we have Bob Menendez from New Jersey. Okay, you screwed up once, like 8 years ago, boy genius. You'd think you'd be lily white after that. And again, he screws up, but being a real good Democrat. By the way, Chucky Schumer did not totally disavow him or ask him to resign. Of course, Chucky, because you always put your crazy ideology ahead of ethics or your religion. But Bob Menendez, he of course goes to the racial card, being a good Democrat, and says, yes, it's in Cuban culture to basically store gold bars. Okay.
right.
Yep. Yep.
He
I
he
hear you.
also he also, by the way, said that he's sticking to his claims of innocence, but he'll be more than happy to testify against his wife. He's throwing
Love his
her under the bus in order to save his career.
just a stand-up guy, just
Yeah.
a total stand-up guy. Well, Dr. Lopkin, a very eventful show, an eventful week, and our listeners can certainly give their input, can't they?
Yes, they
And how has that
can.
been going? Have we gotten some input from our listeners?
We have gotten some. This week was a little slower than last week because people just love the comparison of Mayor McCheese to Lori Lightfoot. That got them
You
commenting.
have to say that's true. Yes, there
You
you go.
know, but yes, let us know what you think. Let us know about your opinions on issues as well as what we're doing on the podcast. Go to the Carnivore Radio Facebook page, message us there. You can also go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you think. And of course, you can catch every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Dr. Lopkin, always a pleasure. See you next week.
We'll see you then.